You want the absolute cheapest way to pick up your first income property? I'm going to show you how I did my first deal. And that deal was so effective and my strategy is so crazy profitable that I've used the same method to pick up 100 more doors. I actively have rental income on 100 properties and I'm making $3 million a year on my rental portfolio. And I did it in just a few years. So I'm going to show you my method. We're also going to talk about the traditional methods, some pitfalls there, and we're going to compare the numbers side by side so you can actually see how cheap and profitable this way really is, because this is best of all. Like, this is cheap to get in, it's fast, your cash on cash returns are insane. We're gonna look at this deal. My name's Sean Rakijic, this is Airbnb Automated, and let's talk about rental arbitrage. All right, welcome back Airbnb family. So first off, a lot of people think to have an income property, you have to own it. That's not true. To have a rental property, you don't have to own it. That's also not true. So I'm going to show you my method because I don't own my properties, but I make $3 million a year, and my profit on my cash, it beats any landlord you have ever met in your life. I swear, I promise you. I'm going to show you how these numbers work right now. So first, let's look at a regular mortgage. The way this typically works is you spend 5% down on a property to get in. Let's just say the home is only worth $100,000. I want to give you guys the easiest opportunity to be a landlord possible in this hypothetical example. So let's say you find a good home for $100,000. Let's say you find a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, somewhere rentable for $100,000. Fat chance, but let's say so. That 3.5 or 5% down, you're spending $3,500 to $5,000 down plus closing costs. So you're looking at maybe $5,000, $6,000. Now you can move in for $5,000 or $6,000 and have your own home, and you can eventually rent the other 2 rooms out to roommates. And this is called house hacking. This is the cheapest way to buy a home to create an income property. But the problem is you can't just simply buy a home and move people in. You'll have to make some key repairs in order for people to be willing to rent from you. I've never seen a $100,000 home or a $200,000 home that was a 3-bedroom that didn't need any love on the way in. So you probably spend another $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 to start renting out these extra rooms. So you're still going to be in for maybe $15,000, $20,000 on this deal. Okay, so that is the legal way to buy a home with a mortgage for cheap to start your first income property. If you do it the other way, it's illegal, and let me tell you how. 3.5 or 5% down on a home. You say you're going to live there. You get the mortgage, you get the home, and then you choose not to live there, and you instead put a tenant in there. That's called occupancy fraud. You could end up in jail and get a fine. People don't typically do this because there's not enough money in real estate to do this. See, you'll make a little bit of cash flow if you're lucky on top of your rent, right? You'll get, your rent is actually a couple $100 maybe over your holding costs like mortgage and expenses. And Bigger Pockets will tell you if you make $200 over your total costs, you're sitting pretty on your income property. People think that $200 cash flow is good, and it's actually not. It's such a small amount of money. It's a boring way to do real estate. But now because of Airbnb, people are actually committing mortgage fraud because there's so much money in the game. Let me give you this example. You can't use a $100,000 property because people won't stay there on Airbnb. You'll probably have to spend $200,000 to $300,000 or buy a home that's valued at that price point in order to find a building that's aesthetic enough to get people to want to stay there. So let's say you find a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in a good neighborhood that people would travel to, and it's $300,000. So you buy that home with 5% down, $15,000. Plus closing costs, you're looking at, what, $17,000 max, right? And then you put a little bit of repairs in there. So you still have to put maybe $10,000, $12,000 of repairs in there so that way the place looks good. Paint, trim, lawn, everything, just to make sure that it looks good in the photos. So you could be in for about $30,000 plus your furniture costs, you're in for $40,000 on a 3-bedroom. Now you're live. But instead of collecting $2,000 a month in rent, which is what you typically probably would, you can get up to $6,000 in cash flow on this property. You're tripling the amount of rent. You see what the temptation is here, where you put $5,000 down on a property and then you cash flow like $6,000 a month? I know people who do it because it's so tempting. But the problem is mortgage fraud is on the rise. See, the last time mortgage fraud was a big deal was 2008 or 2009 when the housing bubble hit. Well, that was the lenders' problem. The lenders were giving people bad deals. And so when everything collapsed, it all just fell on the shoulders of the tenants, and Goldman Sachs bought up like 80,000 homes in the wake of it, right? But now mortgage fraud is on the occupant side. So occupancy fraud, where you lie about who's going to live there, is happening more and more because Airbnb has made it easy. There's something called a peel back, where people will look at your mortgage down the road and make sure that everything's legitimate. They might even do a house call and find out that you don't live there, and you can get in trouble. You could end up in jail, get a fine. It'd be bad. So this is illegal, right? And this is probably the most popular way to pick up your first income property, is to, get a cheap loan and lie about it. Technically, to get an income property you don't live in, you should be putting 20% down, because the type of mortgage you get is restricted if you don't live there. So my method of picking up properties costs less than $5,000 to do it. What I do is I find buildings that need me. So for example, the building that I'm in, I actually did a video tour of another property that I already furnished. It's absolutely beautiful. I picked up 10 in this apartment, right? I have 7 on this floor alone, and this is one of them. And I got in for super cheap, and let me tell you for how much, and let me tell you how. So I find landlords that need me, right? So there's one property in Houston that I did a deal with, that if they did not sign enough leases within 60 days, that the bank would come and take the building back. The owner would lose possession of the apartment complex because their loan required that they have a certain occupancy in a certain period of time. And if they didn't do it, the bank would pull the loan. So they needed me to sign a lot of leases. This deal here, this building is a new property. There's one down the street, same road. If you hear the cars behind us, just down the street, I picked up another 20 doors at that building. All these buildings are brand new, and they need to sign as many leases as possible. This is called a lease up. You can also find buildings like the one that the bank was going to pull the loan. There's older buildings that are like more dilapidated, they're B-class properties, and the landlords need more tenants because they need to pay their notes or they need to cover their costs. So you can call a building and say, hey, what's your occupancy right now? If it's under 90%, they're likely going to want to play ball. If it's under 85%, there's probably somebody at the building that's going to get fired if they don't fix that soon. I've actually seen management companies lose contracts for high-rises in Dallas because they couldn't get over 85% occupancy. There's one that I actually had an Airbnb in for a long time that actually went through that exact problem. And if they would have just said yes to give me more doors at the rate I liked, they could have kept their contract. But they didn't, they got greedy. So I find landlords that need me for multiple reasons. If you want a single family home, you can just look on Craigslist, look on Zillow, drive around neighborhoods, note homes that are for rent, and find ones that have been for rent for more than 60 days. That landlord is hurting because they're still paying a mortgage and they have zero cash flow, zero income. Because sometimes it's hard. Like up here where I am in Philadelphia, the winter, it's just really hard to find a new tenant. So there's going to be times where landlords are susceptible to this idea. And here's what you're going to tell them. You'll say, hi, Mr. Landlord or Mrs. Landlord. I run a professional company that furnishes properties. And I want to take a long-term lease with you, like 3 years or longer. And I'm going to spend money on furniture. And then I'm going to market your property as a furnished rental. Right? And I'm going to collect money from those tenants. I'm going to pay you rent every month. By me doing this, I take the risk of occupancy. I'll pay your rent. You don't worry about it, and I'll cover it. So these landlords who want their problem fixed, those who have this occupancy issue, they want that problem fixed. They'll say yes to you. You take over the property, you furnish it, and then you put it on Airbnb. So with this building, because I negotiated 10 doors, just like this, I didn't pay for first month's rent. I didn't pay last month's rent. I paid half of the security deposit that they asked me to. I actually did a video how I saved $33,500 in one email. This is that building. So they said, okay, so for all the doors, this is what we want from you. And I'm like, no. I sent them an email back. I'm like, well, considering the deal, I want this, 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 and this. And they said, okay. So $33,500 that they wanted from me on the front end to get into this building was marked off. So they wanted $42,000. Or $41,500 from me, $41,500. And with that email, we knocked $33,500 off. For my first 10 leases, I gave them $7,000 security deposit for 10 leases. Okay, so this one cost me $700 to get into. And how much did it cost me to rent? All this is like very much IKEA style furniture. It cost me $3,500 to furnish this place. The one down the hall that I did the tour video where I showed like how much it cost me to get in. If you didn't see that video, that building cost me, or that room cost me about $4,200 to furnish. So what is your total cost to get your very first one? Well, first you need an LLC. Okay, so that'll cost you $200 or $300. Then if you negotiated a deal like me, you pay $700 security deposit. You're looking at $1,000. So for this one, you spend $3,500 on furniture, and now you're in for $4,500, but your first month of rent is free. So you take a week to get this set up, faster if you do it like me, and then you have about 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks to start making some money. And by the time rent is due a month from now, you'll actually have your first real month's rent worth of income. So you actually just got in for that $5,000 or less because you're going to use your income on Airbnb to pay your first month's rent. And that's it. Isn't that wicked powerful? Yeah, it's crazy. So if you have any questions about how this works, you want to see more of my numbers, I've got 200 videos on this channel of everything that I've done over the last couple years to build this business. It's fun and it's awesome. It's allowed me to get into real estate where I never even planned on getting into real estate. And if you have questions about stuff that you can't find a video for on this channel, just leave it in the comments. I do read them. I'll answer them for you. And welcome to the movement. Welcome to Airbnb Automated. I'll see you on the other side.